Imagine sitting at a poker table where the stakes aren't plastic chips, but global economic stability, regional hegemony, and the very real threat of catastrophic war. Your opponent is staring you down. You have a massive stack of chips. They have a fraction of that. Common sense says you can bully them into folding. But what if folding means they don't just lose the hand, but they lose their life? Do they still fold?
That is exactly the terrifying beauty of applying game theory to international relations. You are describing the exact dynamic between the United States and Iran. It is easy to look at the sheer asymmetry in military and economic power and assume that maximum pressure will inevitably lead to absolute capitulation. But game theory tells us a completely different story.
And that is exactly what we are dissecting today. We are going to map out the US-Iranian conflict through the cold, mathematical lens of game theory to answer one specific question. Will this conflict end with Iran conceding to all the demands of US forces? Is a total, zero-sum victory actually mathematically possible in this scenario?
Spoiler alert for anyone hoping for a simple, clean resolution. The math gets incredibly messy when survival is on the line. But to truly understand why, we have to look at the specific game models at play. We are talking about the game of chicken, the ultimatum game, and how rational actors behave when backed into a corner.
Before we map out the exact probability of a total concession and dive into the mechanics of this geopolitical standoff, let's take a quick second. If you love deep dives into topics just like this, or even if you want a break with some lighter fare, you need to check out a fantastic show called The New Sentinel.
Absolutely. The New Sentinel is a podcast dedicated to providing in-depth discussions and deep dives into a really wide array of topics. They literally cover it all. We are talking everything from the glitz and glamour of pop culture to the strategic intricacies of military operations.
Each episode is thoughtfully crafted to offer listeners a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter. They feature expert interviews, incredibly detailed analysis, and engaging storytelling. Whether you are a pop culture enthusiast or someone with a keen interest in global security, The New Sentinel has something for everyone. Tune in, share, like, comment, and view to stay informed and entertained.
And a quick note for the entrepreneurs out there. If you are a local business and you want to advertise with them, it is super easy. Simply contact them at claebede@yahoo.com. Again, that is claebede@yahoo.com.
All right, let's get back to the geopolitical chessboard. Or rather, the poker table. When we look at the US and Iran, the US has historically utilized a maximalist approach. Sanctions, military posturing, diplomatic isolation. The implicit, and sometimes explicit, demand is total behavioral change. Dismantle the nuclear program, stop funding proxy militias, pull back regional influence, basically concede to all demands. From a game theory perspective, how does Iran calculate its response to an all-or-nothing ultimatum?
To understand Iran's calculation, we have to look at their utility function, which is just a fancy way of saying what they value most. For the Iranian leadership, the absolute highest value, the infinite payoff is regime survival. Everything else is secondary. The economy, international standing, even conventional military strength, all take a back seat to staying in power.
So if the US demands concessions that threaten that very survival, the math fundamentally changes.
Precisely. This is where we look at the ultimatum game. In a classic ultimatum game, if they reject it, both get nothing. Now, if the US demands 100% concession, they are essentially offering Iran a payoff of zero. But in geopolitics, yielding to all demands doesn't just mean a zero payoff. For the Iranian regime, it equates to a negative payoff. It looks like weakness, it risks domestic uprising, and it dismantles the very security apparatus that keeps them in power.
Meaning, rejecting the ultimatum and facing the consequences even if those consequences are severe economic pain or targeted military strikes, is actually the rational choice. They prefer the cost of conflict over the cost of political suicide.
Exactly. Let's use an analogy. Imagine you are trying to corner a wild tiger in a room. You have a tranquilizer gun, and you demand the tiger simply lie down and surrender. If you leave the door open just a crack, the tiger might calculate that escaping through the door is a better option than fighting you. But if you lock the door and demand total submission, the tiger's calculation changes. Surrender means captivity or death. Fighting, even against a superior weapon, offers a non-zero chance of survival. Game theory dictates the tiger will attack.
That perfectly illustrates the danger of maximalist demands. If the US leaves no diplomatic off-ramp, no face-saving measure, they are locking the door. And we see this play out in real time, through asymmetric warfare, don't we? Iran knows it cannot win a conventional head-to-head war with the US, so they change the game entirely.
They refuse to play chess, and instead, they start playing Go. In game theory, when you are the weaker player in a direct confrontation, your dominant strategy is to avoid direct confrontation and increase the cost of the game for your opponent. Iran does this through its axis of resistance proxies in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. They also hold a massive geographic trump card, the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, where a massive percentage of the world's oil flows.
Exactly. Iran's strategy is basically a massive deterrence mechanism. They are signaling to the US, if you push us to the absolute brink, if you demand total concession, we will not fight you on a battlefield of your choosing. We will choke off the global economy, and we will ignite the entire region. This transforms the scenario into a classic game of chicken.
Two cars speeding toward each other on a narrow bridge. The one who swerves first loses face, but if neither swerves, they both die.
And the key to winning a game of chicken is to convince the other driver that you have thrown your steering wheel out the window. Iran works very hard to project an image of ideological absolute resolve. They want the US to believe that they will literally accept national destruction before they accept total surrender.
Which forces the US to calculate the cost of a collision. The US might have the bigger car, a massive military machine, but a head-on collision still totals the car. The economic fallout of a closed Strait of Hormuz. The cost of a regional war. The political backlash, domestically. The US has to ask itself, is forcing Iran to concede to absolutely everything worth the cost of the collision?
And historically, the answer from Washington has ultimately been no. The US calculates its own minimax theorem trying to minimize the maximum possible loss. The maximum possible loss for the US isn't a non-compliant Iran. It is a full-scale regional war that drags in global superpowers and tanks the global economy.
So, to directly answer the core question we posed, will the conflict end with the Iranians conceding to all the demands of the US forces?
Based on game theory, the probability is effectively zero. A rational actor will never accept a payoff that equals their own destruction if there is any alternative, even a highly destructive one. Iran will concede on the margins. They will negotiate tactically to relieve pressure. We saw that with the JCPOA in 2015. They will trade pawns, but they will never surrender the king.
Because surrendering the king isn't a strategy. It is the end of the game. And the fundamental rule of geopolitics is that the primary objective of every state is to ensure they get to keep playing the game tomorrow.
That is a profound way to look at it. We often view international conflicts through the lens of Hollywood movies, where there is a clear victor and a vanquished enemy signing a treaty on the deck of a battleship. But in the modern, hyper-connected world of nuclear thresholds and asymmetric proxies, zero-sum victories are an illusion.
It really forces us to redefine what winning actually means. If pushing for total victory guarantees a catastrophic loss for both sides, then the only rational strategy is managed competition. It is an uncomfortable truth. We want decisive endings. We want the bad guy to give up. But game theory mathematically proves that demanding absolute surrender is often the most irrational move you can make.
It leaves us with a rather unsettling philosophical reality. The peace we experience on a global scale isn't the result of harmony or total victory. It is the result of a meticulously balanced, incredibly tense mathematical equilibrium. It is peace maintained by the mutual promise of unacceptable pain.
A fragile equilibrium, held together by rational actors who we just have to hope stay rational. It makes you wonder, what happens when a player enters the game who doesn't value survival the way the models predict? What happens when the math of deterrence meets an ideology of martyrdom? But that is a deep dive for another day.
A terrifying one, at that.
Indeed. We will leave it there for now. The geopolitical poker game continues. The blind is raised, and the cards are being dealt. We will see who blinks next.